Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Inkwell Remix. My name is John, and today, in celebration of International Women's Day, we're going to be looking at the women who make this game so much fun. Now, I'm not talking about the princesses, although we do love a princess. No, I'm talking about the women without whom Disney would just not be the same the villains. Because where would every Disney movie be without their villains? And let's be honest, the women do it in the most style. They are the most fabulous ones, the ones who are truly magnificent, truly evil. So today, we're focusing on Lorcana decks built around our female villains who are going to crush the world and rule the ashes as they should. Now, I've managed to get not one, not two, but three different decks together. We've got one Infinity deck, one Core Constructed, and a movie deck. It wouldn't be an Inkwell Remix video if we didn't have a movie deck. So, without further ado, let's get started. Our first deck today is the Infinity deck. And I started by saying to myself, what were the most powerful, generally evil villains characters, villains cards in Infinity that I could think of? And there were two obvious answers: Ursula, Deceiver of All, and Diablo. Now, Diablo, of course, isn't a villain, although I think he was a villain for a lot of people when he was still in core. But he is, of course, the ally of one of the greatest villains of all, Maleficent. So what we have here is an Emerald Amethyst villains themed deck. So let's dive straight in and have a look. 41 characters, and we know it's a 61 card deck. I just couldn't bring myself to cut one more card, so we're playing 61, and frankly, who cares? Starting off with lots of nice cheap Diablos. Of course, if we're going to shift in 3-cost Diablo, we need 1-drops to shift him onto. So we've got both Obedient Raven and Maleficent Spy. So chance of you having a starting hand Diablo, nice and high. And, of course, 4 copies of Cursed Merfolk. Lovely aggro card, helps discard your opponent's hand, and very fitting for an Ursula theme. So that covers our 1-drops nicely. Moving on to the 2-drops, 12 of those as well. We've got another Diablo, the Spiteful Raven. He's in the right colours for this deck. And a very potent, evasive Challenger +2. He's a good body. I really like him. Alongside that, 2 copies of Ursula. The Mad Sea Witch challenges a 3/3, which is pretty solid. Rest of the time, not so much, but she's still a solid 2-drop and inkable, so no harm in having her. And then, of course, Ursula Deceiver. Such a strong card. That ability to take songs out of your opponent's hand. It was good back in set, or what was it, 3 when it first came out, and it's still good in set 9 with Fabled. It's still good now in set 11. Of course, we play 4. Then we get to 3 ink, and that's where all the fun happens. We've got Diablo Devoted Herald, that horrible, horrible bird. His Shift, Discard, and Action card, of course, always been potent, and that's why we've got all those 8 1-drop Diablos and the 4 2-drops in there to make sure we've got a shift target. Evasive, and as long as he's exerted, you draw a card whenever your opponent draws a card, if it's in their turn. How can that be anything but amazing? And then alongside him, we have Ursula, Deceiver of All. Singing a song once is good, singing a song twice is absolutely ridiculous. And Ursula just does it over and over again. Truly a mighty villain. She deserves her title. Alongside that, we have Maleficent, Mistress of All Evil. Only 3 copies, because I don't think we genuinely need 4 of her, but it's the most brilliantly evil villains card Maleficent has. We had to play some of her, and you've got to say, questing, drawing cards, that's powerful. And then whenever you draw a card during your turn, you may move a damage counter from chosen character to chosen opposing character. Now that applies for the card you draw at the start of your turn. That's every single card you draw in a turn. And so if you can get Ursula, for example, to sing, oh, I don't know, if only there was a song that drew cards, like Friends on the Other Side, for example, that would be an awful lot of cards being drawn, and that's an awful lot of damage getting moved. So we have to love Maleficent. She's so fitting. Her and Ursula teaming up, conquering the Lorcana world. Who could possibly say no to a villain combination like that? Then finally, for our big heavy hitters, we've got Ursula, Whisper of Vanessa, who honestly, it's a really good card. I'm surprised we're not seeing more of it in core right now. A 4/5 with 2 law is excellent, and then just 1 ink to boost her to make it 3 law and evasive. That's a powerhouse. I'm shocked that she's 44 cents right now. I think she's worth a lot more. So absolutely playing 4 of her. And then finally, just 2 copies of Ursula, Sea Witch Queen, the ultimate, most powerful Ursula of all. 3 law, 4/7, shift 5. all excellent. Whenever she quests exert chosen character, very useful. You'll Listen to Me isn't so good. We don't actually want Sea Witch Queen on the board at the same time as Deceiver of All, but if we do, then I guess there's probably worse problems to be having. And worse comes to worse, we can always shift Sea Witch Queen onto Deceiver of All and keep our other Ursulas around to take advantage of the challenging. Any which way, we've got to play the big Ursula, along with Maleficent, the Mistress of All Evil. There are villains, and this is a villains deck. We had to do it. The rest of the deck is equally straightforward. We've got Deceiver of All in the deck, so we need to play songs. And we're playing lots and lots and lots of songs. Now, in my original version of the deck, I was running This Is My Family, because 2 lore and 2 cards, when Ursula sings it, is pretty good. But it's not a song about a villain. So, staying true to the theme, I cut it and put in 4 copies of Sudden Chill instead. So, all of our songs, possibly not the absolute top selections, but they are all villain songs. I know Malicious, Mean and Scary doesn't end up being a villain song because we love the Bandits, but they seem pretty villainous at the time. So I think all of these songs are really fitting for a villain's deck. And of course, we've got possibly the scariest villain of all time, Mother Gothel there, singing Mother Knows Best. We've got Friends on the other side, drawing 4 cards a turn if Ursula can sing it twice. And good lord, the damage movement if Maleficent's on the field as well. The boss is on a roll. It's a good way of filtering through your deck, finding that card that you want, or those cards, in fact, that you want, gaining a lore. And again, if you can do it twice because Ursula's singing it, so much the better. So there we go. It's not a terribly complicated deck. You play characters, you quest aggressively, try to make sure that you're dropping Diablo early, maybe turn 2 if you've got the shift line, and you've got 20 songs to throw away, so you should be able to find a shift somewhere. Then follow it up with Ursula, Deceiver of All, and then just bury your opponent in card advantage and songs. It's not complicated, but I do think it looks like a really fun, really thematic deck if you want to go to infinity and just play something a bit casual. So, that's deck number 1. Let's move on and have a look at our second deck, which is core constructed and focuses on a very different villain. So, I think you can probably guess, just looking at the first 3 cards, our core constructed deck is based around the Queen of Hearts. As we can see, it's a bit different to the last deck if we look at the cost curve, a little bit more balanced in terms of the 1, 2s, 3s, and actually has some 4-drops, which our previous deck didn't, and a bit more spread out across the curve. So, our 1-drops. Well, we've got 4 card soldiers, of course, a classic 1-drop, very good with the Queen of Hearts and all her focus on damage. And then we've got that pseudo 1-drop in the White Rabbit late again. He's a really good underdog. If you can drop a 1 for 1, you can get a 2/2 evasive on turn 1. That's amazing. So yes, I know he's counted as a 2-drop, but he does fall just as much in the 1-drop category, at least in my mind. Then we have the classic Queen of Hearts Impulsive Ruler and Queen of Hearts Losing Her Temper. They are there to be shifted onto by the big Queens of Hearts. There's 2 of those, so we want the 8 copies here, and they both do a job. Having Rush can be really important sometimes, and Losing Her Temper isn't great by herself, but once you get 1 damage on her, suddenly she's a 4/3, and that hits very hard for 2 cost. So we like her. Now, I will confess, I couldn't make this a deck just about the Queen of Hearts. So much like Ursula and Maleficent had to team up, she has called in some reinforcements to make the deck work. Her reinforcements, yes, they're male, I know, but at least he's not it's not Jafar, it's not Facilier. She's called in Shere Khan to provide some backup. So it's the Queen of Hearts and her pet tiger, really. That's the story, and I'm sticking to it. So in our 3-drops, we have Shere Khan Menacing Predator, getting some value out of those challenges that we're inevitably going to be making, and we have Shenzi, Scar's Accomplice. It's female, so I thought that ticked the box, and more importantly, she's an inkable 3-drop with evasive. The fact that she also gets more strength when challenging damaged characters is a bonus, as we'll see in a minute, because we're hoping to have a lot of damage all over the board. So Shenzi can often hit for 4, and she's some way of getting rid of your opponent's evasives. And we don't have that many options in this deck for doing that. So she's well worth playing. Moving on to our 4-drops, we have the King of Hearts, Picky Ruler. He is firmly under his wife's thumb, of course, so I don't feel any problem with playing him in the deck. And that ability, damaged characters can't challenge your characters. It's remarkably powerful when we get over to the Queen of Hearts Unpredictable Bully, which we'll do in a moment. But before that, we have the Queen of Hearts Haughty Monarch. 2/3 for 4 inkable. She has 3 law as standard, which helps make up a bit for her less than good stats. And then, while there are 5 or more characters with damage in play, note that's 5 or more characters total, not opposing characters. So if your characters have some and theirs have some, they all count. She goes up to 6 law off a single quest. That is just insane. I've played a deck like this last season, and when I managed to quest with the Queen of Hearts for 6 lore time, I won the game every time. It's almost impossible to come back from that kind of lore swing off a single character. And she's by no means the biggest threat in the deck by stats. So it usually meant my opponent either had to send resources to dealing with her, which would have been better used elsewhere, or they had to find a way of just killing off their characters so there weren't 5 damaged characters in play. And if they're killing off their own characters, fine by me. Now, the Queen of Hearts Unpredictable Bully is the core card of the deck. A 5 uninkable for a 2/6, not ideal in the stats, but Shift 3 is good, 2 lore is good, and most importantly, if I lose my temper. Whenever another character is played, put a damage counter on them. Yes, this affects your characters as well as your opponents, but as we've seen with the Queen of Hearts Haughty Monarch, that's not necessarily a bad thing. A lot of your abilities just trigger off damaged characters. If we roll back to the top with card soldiers, we can see it's the same thing, while a damaged character is in play. So if one of your characters is damaged, card soldiers is a 3/2. If one of your opponent's characters is damaged, card soldiers is a 3/2. Just has to be damaged, doesn't matter who. So Unpredictable Bully does that. Every character just comes in and gets damage. Nice and straightforward, nice and simple, and you want that. You want it all over the place. So she is the card I would mulligan for hardest. You want a 2-drop queen, and you want the Unpredictable Bully. If you get that, you're in a good place. We have a lot of 5-drops in this deck, because we're also running Tweedledee and Tweedledum. Whenever this character quests, you may return another chosen damaged character to their player's hand. Solid. Remember, the Queen of Hearts is bringing everything in with damage. That's effectively a free bounce every time they quest. And if you need to get one of your characters out of the way for some reason, you can bounce them too. I've never actually used Tweedledee and Tweedledum before, but I think they're a solid card in this deck. They'll do their job. Very similarly, we have Card Soldiers, the full deck. Very fitting with the Queen of Hearts theme, which honestly is the main reason they're in the deck. But a 5/5 with 2 lore isn't bad. I imagine we'll be inking this card most of the time, just because it's not anything crazy, but if we have to play it, I wouldn't be that upset. It's thematic to the deck, and it's solid. Then finally, we have the Queen of Hearts Sensing Weakness. Probably the best Queen of Hearts. I love Unpredictable Bully, but drawing cards is simply amazing. So with Queen of Hearts Sensing Weakness and Shere out at the same time, every one of your challenges is going to net you a card and a lore. And if that isn't villainous, then frankly, I don't know what is. We really like her. She's a big card for the deck. And then last but by no means least, we have another Shere Khan Fearsome Tiger. 6 uninkable. Hurts, it's got to be said. Getting him stuck in hand is an absolute pain, but he's evasive, he has 2 lore, and whenever he quests, banish a chosen opposing damaged character. Then you may put 1 damage counter on another chosen character. So he quests, banishes enemies, and then sets up to do it again next turn. It's brilliant. He's vulnerable to direct removal. 5/4 isn't tough enough to take Thunderbolts to the face. Sadly, Dragonfire, of course, deals with him very quickly, but Evasive will mean there's not all that many challenges around for him. And my goodness, if this guy starts, if he survives the turn he's played and he can start questing, he is so much value. That deals with the characters. We can see the theme of the deck now. It's about spreading damage all over the place and then taking advantage of that damage. Backing that up, we have our actions, 4 copies of Mosquito Bite, nice, cheap, efficient, 1 damage on chosen character. Sometimes it'll kill Tinkerbell, the 3/1/1 drop, that's good. Sometimes it just puts a damage on something. And then we rely on the King of Hearts to stop that card challenging. Or we can now bounce it with Tweedledee and Tweedledum. There's a lot of places in this deck where 1 damage, where we need it, can matter quite a bit. And finally, we've got a one of over here. Most everyone's mad here. Gain lore equal to damage on chosen character, then banish them. So we can clean up an opposing character if we need to, or potentially use on one of your own characters heavily damaged in order to get a hefty amount of lore. It's potentially a game winner, but 7 cost uninkable, we aren't playing more than 1 of that. And then, of course, we have 4 copies of Malicious, Mean, and Scary. It's the premier dropping damage card. We have to play 4 copies in this deck. As I said, I've played a similar deck to this a couple of times in the previous set. It did okay, honestly. Going up against full power core constructed decks, it won't win all that much. But again, it's a fun thematic deck. If you're at a more casual event, if you've got people who enjoy a really themed deck, or you're just playing at the kitchen table, I urge you to give this one a go. It's thematic, it's full of villains, and I do think it's really quite fun. And finally, our last deck celebrating International Women's Day focuses on the Disney woman closest to my heart. The one, the only, the Queen. I used to play this deck a few sets ago when, at my local at least, we were still playing 40 card movie decks. And honestly, I loved it. Because as you can see, there are 44 characters named the Queen. So I played a deck that consisted entirely of the Queen. Every turn was ink the Queen, play the Queen, ink the Queen, play the Queen. My opponents got incredibly confused. And there's some wonderful synergies in the deck that make it work. Sadly, 60 card deck is required these days, so we can't quite play a deck that's purely the Queen, but there's still plenty of cards in there. 3/4 of the deck is named the Queen, and most of the other cards are at least thematic to it. Although I'll discuss that a little bit more in a minute, because there's some better choices that aren't. Anyway, our characters. Basically, you select the colors that have the most queens in them, which means amber, amethyst, and sapphire. There's 1 emerald queen right now, and there's going to be another one next set, which I was kind of sad about because printing her in emerald was just frustrating. But hey, those 2 are out because we're sticking to 3 colors for our movie deck. So you take every card named the Queen and you play them. Regal Monarch is our 1-drop. She's incredibly vanilla, but she does a job. We need her. Cruelest of all, 0/4 with Ward. Her biggest role is pretty much just to sit on the field and not be removed because of the ward. Because there's a few of our best cards require a critical mass of queens. So she's a good one. You can pop her down early and just leave her there, counting as a queen for some of the later cards. Conceited Ruler is one of our newer ones. Support, to make your other queens a bit more capable in combat. And choose and discard a princess or queen card to return a character. That's useful because it means later on we can turn the Cruelest of All, or the Regal Monarch, into something a lot more powerful if we need to. So it helps make sure that some of our dead draws later on aren't quite so dead. Then we have the Queen Hateful Rival, 4/3, 1 lore. She's a vanilla card, but again, we want to play her because she's named the Queen, and the 4 power is quite useful. The Queen Diviner is a very good card, not generally in this deck particularly. There are a few items, but not many. She's mostly in here as a 3/3 for 3. But as I'll show you later, there are a couple of items which are reasonably useful. So you might occasionally want to consult the spell book because you will be able to play the item for free if you find it. Otherwise, she's a body, she's a queen, that's what we want. Then we have the Queen Jealous Beauty. I'm a big fan of this one. A 4/3 with 1 lore isn't great, but exert her, choose 3 cards from the opponent's discard and put them on the bottom of the deck to gain 3 lore. If you get a princess this way, gain 4 lore. Chance of getting a princess are pretty high when it comes to movie decks, and there's a few decks that actually like having the right cards in their discard, so putting them back on the bottom of the deck means your opponent is pretty much guaranteed not to see them again. Lilo Escape Artist is the obvious candidate here. And an easy way of getting 3 or possibly even 4 lore. That's a good swing. I think she's well worth playing. Now, again to the meaty ones here. The Queen Crown of the Council was back when I could play a purely Queen's deck, quite simply a play a character, draw 3 cards. First of all, 3/2 with Ward and 2 lore is solid. You drop her, you keep her until you need the quest. But Gatherer of the Wicked is mad. When you play this character, look at the top 3 cards of your deck. You may reveal any number of character cards named the Queen and put them into your hand. put the rest in the bottom of your deck in any order. We have 44 queens in this deck. So 3/4 of the deck, almost exactly, is named the queen. That means you should get at least 2 cards every time you play this card. That's just mad. As I said, it used to be, when I played her, that she was a guaranteed draw 3. That was even worse. But playing her and drawing 2 cards on top, still incredibly good. She's the second biggest reason to play this deck. The Queen Mirror Seeker is another semi-vanilla one. 2/5 is not great stats, honestly, but when she quests, you may look at the top 3 cards of your deck and put them back in any order. Helps you find the cards you need if you're chasing something in particular. It's not bad. Again, she's one I probably ink more than I play, but I don't mind playing her if I've got nothing better. Then we have the Queen Commanding Presence. I love this card, have done ever since set 2. You probably know her already. A 4/3 that shifts for 2. My goodness, for 2. Quest for 2 lore, and then gives -4 power to an opponent's character and +4 power to any character. She's the one that wrecks your opponent's combat maths and makes their days miserable. We love her. She's a commanding presence, and we play all 4 every time. Our final 2. The Queen Wicked and Vain. 4/5 is a great body for 5 ink, and exert, draw a card. So you can quest with her, you can challenge with her, and if you don't want to do any of those things, you can draw a card. I mean, versatility at its finest. And then finally, we have my favorite card of all, the Queen Fairest of All. 2/6 with 1 lore doesn't look amazing. Shift 3 helps, still not amazing. Ward helps, still not amazing. But then you get to Reflections of Vanity. For each other character named the Queen you have in play, this character gets +1 lore. Yes, that's why we play Cruelest of All and we leave her sat on the board unexerted. Because you shift in the Queen Fairest of All, and all of a sudden you're questing for 6, 7 lore at a time. My best thing with this deck was having, I think, 6 queens out, and then on turn 6, I shifted 2 copies of the Queen Fairest of All in. And all of a sudden, they each quested for 6. Because effectively, this card has 1 lore for every queen in play. They don't count themselves, but they have a lore printed. So yes, both of those came in. I quested for 6 with just the 2 queens, grabbed another 4 or 5 from my remaining characters, and my opponent just stared at me for a moment and threw down their cards. It was more or less a one-shot KO. I love this card. She and Crown of the Council are the deck's gimmicks. They are the reasons you play it. But they work really well, and most importantly, they're warded. Incredibly hard to get rid of unless you're playing against the Lion King, or I suppose now against Lilo and Stitch, and your opponent's threatening a board wipe. Rest of the time, though, you've got to love the queens. Our various other cards are, I tried to go for thematic ones. We've got 2 copies of Show Me More, because drawing cards is really useful, and it's very much a queen's card, although giving your opponent's cards isn't ideal. So this is probably the weakest card in the deck for the deck. And finally, we have 10 items. Now, as you know, normally I wouldn't pick Lorcana specific cards if I could avoid it, but there simply aren't enough Evil Queen themed cards in Snow White to make a deck viable by itself. So we're playing 4 copies of the Queen's Sensicore, which is a guaranteed 1 lore every turn as long as we have a character in play. And of course, we know that all our characters are queens, so if we activate the Royal Search, we have a 3 in 4 chance we're going to hit a character. And that's drawing a card for 2 lore. Drawing a card for 2 ink. We like that. Magic Mirror, again, incredibly thematic for the Evil Queen. Paying 4 ink to draw a card when we've got this many other options isn't wonderful, but it fits the deck, and more card draw is rarely a bad thing. So we're playing 3 copies. Seeing 1 every game isn't a bad thing. And then finally, 3 copies of Ink Runner. Important because the deck has absolutely no evasive whatsoever. So the ability to hand out alert is probably going to be quite important. It's also a 3 or less cost item, so the Queen Diviner can find it and pop it in play for free. And of course, you play the item, you draw a card. It's generic, it's useful, and honestly, if you had to play without Lorcana specific cards and not play the Ink Runner and the Sensicore, the deck becomes significantly weaker. And then finally, sticking with theme, we have 4 copies of the Queen's Castle Mirror Chamber. 4 ink for a 7 defense location with 2 lore, and at the start of your turn, for each character you have here, you may draw a card. In other words, more card draw. It's almost like we've got Amethyst in our deck or something. So there you go. That's my third and final deck, the Queen's Movie Deck. It's honestly been my favorite movie deck pretty much forever. I love how ridiculous it is and just how much you can get out of playing 44 copies of the Evil Queen. It's just so much fun. So if you're going to play one deck from this video, I would absolutely recommend playing this one. But I appreciate it's hard to play movie decks sometimes if that's not what everyone else likes to play around you. Anyway, everyone, I hope you've enjoyed this video celebrating International Women's Day and those wonderful villains that make our movies so enjoyable. I look forward to seeing you all again soon for another Inkwell Remix video. If you've enjoyed this or any of my other videos, please do like, subscribe, comment down below. I'd love to hear from you. And I'll see you all next time for another Inkwell Remix.